When you really stop and think about how our brains actually work, well,
Yeah.
it's just incredible. All those connections, the signals firing.
It really is. And today, we're diving into a really small but absolutely critical bit of the neuron. It's called the axon initial segment, the
The
AIS.
the AIS, right? And this is where the neuron basically decides what to fire or not to fire.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think about each neuron gets tons of input, right? Messages coming in constantly. The AIS is where all that gets added up,
Yeah.
essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's the gatekeeper. It decides, do we send an electrical signal and action potential down the line or not? And that signal, that's, the fundamental language of the brain.
Okay, so where is this thing, this
Mm.
AIS? And I mean, what makes it the decider?
So it's right at the very beginning of the axon. You know the axon, that long sort of cable
Yeah.
where it sprouts from the main cell body? And its main job is integration. It takes all those incoming signals, combines them.
Okay.
And if the total electrical buzz reaches a certain point right there at the AIS, boom, action potential, signal sent.
Right. So how does this tiny little bit of axon, make that call? What's the secret sauce?
The key thing is it's packed, really densely packed with these tiny things called voltage-gated sodium channels.
Okay, sodium channels, like little electrical switches.
Exactly, super sensitive ones. And there are way more of them concentrated right there in the AIS than anywhere else on the neuron.
Ah, so it's like a crowd of really jumpy switches.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It means the AIS needs less of an electrical nudge, lower threshold, to actually fire off that action potential.
Yeah.
It's the most sensitive spot, the trigger.
Got it, the super sensitive trigger. And I think you mentioned something about specific proteins being involved too.
Yes, absolutely. The AIS has a really unique set of molecules. Specific proteins are just jam-packed in there, creating this specialized structure that helps it do its job.
Like a dedicated toolkit just for making that firing decision.
Precisely.
Now, are all these decision points, these AIS structures, are they identical in every single neuron? Because there are lots of different types of neurons, right?
That's a great point. And no, they're not all the same. Not at all.
Yeah.
The actual length, even the specific proteins inside the AIS, can vary quite a bit between different neuron types.
Mm.
And this suggests that while different neurons might have slightly different rules for deciding when to fire, probably tailored to whatever their specific job in the brain is.
Okay, that makes sense. Like a neuron controlling a muscle versus one storing a memory might need different settings.
Exactly.
And those settings change. Is the firing threshold fixed?
No, and this is really interesting. The AIS isn't static. Its excitability, its likelihood to fire, can actually be adjusted.
Ah, so it can adapt.
Yes, it's adaptable. We call this plasticity. It's fundamental for learning and memory. The AIS can change its properties based on, say, how active the neuron has been recently. It fine-tunes itself.
Okay, that connects a few dots. But what happens if this critical gatekeeper, the AIS, gets damaged, say through injury or disease?
Well, given it's the starting point for the neuron's main output signal, any damage there can seriously mess up communication.
Right, it disrupts the whole signaling chain.
Definitely. And that disruption is thought to contribute potentially to various neurological problems.
It seems incredible we can even study something so tiny. How do researchers actually, see the AIS?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We use advanced microscopes, things like fluorescence microscopy, and special labeling techniques that make the AIS or its specific proteins light up.
So you can pinpoint it.
Exactly. That's been crucial for figuring out how it works.
And going back to that adaptability, the plasticity,
Mm.
how does that actually tie into, say, learning something new? That's what everyone wants to know, right? How does the brain learn?
It's believed to be a key part of it. Think about it. If the AIS can make it easier or harder for a neuron to fire based on experience,
Uh-huh.
that effectively changes how strongly that neuron communicates with others. It can strengthen or weaken connections in a circuit. And that process, strengthening and weakening connections, is fundamentally how we think learning and memory storage happens.
Wow. So tiny adjustments, huge consequences for learning. You also mentioned links to disorders earlier.
Yes. Problems with the IS, its structure, its function, its proteins, have been seen in conditions like epilepsy, where neurons can become hyperexcitable.
Firing too much.
Right. And also, potentially in neurodegenerative diseases. Understanding the AIS role in these conditions is a big research focus.
Which naturally leads to the question, could we maybe target the AIS therapeutically for treatments?
That's definitely a hope for the future. It's an exciting possibility. If we could find ways to, say, specifically adjust AIS function in neurons that are misbehaving.
Like tuning them back to normal?
Sort of, yeah. It could potentially offer a very targeted way to treat certain neurological or psychiatric disorders down the line. Still early days, but promising.
Okay, let's try and sum this up then. This Axon initial segment, this AIS, it's this tiny but incredibly powerful gatekeeper at the start of the axon.
Yep, the decision point.
It integrates signals, uses a high density of sodium channels to have a low firing threshold, and it's not even the same in all neurons.
Right, it varies. And it's dynamic.
Dynamic, it can change its own sensitivity, which links into learning, but problems with it are implicated in diseases like epilepsy.
You've got it. It's a complex, critical player in neural communication.
So, as you're listening to this, just think. Billions of these tiny segments in your brain are constantly making these crucial fire-don't-fire decisions that underpin literally everything you think, feel, and do.
It really puts it in perspective, and maybe leaves you with a final thought. Given how vital this microscopic AIs is, what other tiny, maybe overlooked structures inside us hold similarly huge secrets to how we function, how we stay healthy, maybe even who we are?
Makes you wonder what else is hiding in the details.